Hey, what's going on, guys? In this video, we'll be doing something a little bit different. I'm going to be building an arcade stick, piece by piece. Yeah, I'm a huge fan of 2D fighting games, specifically Blazblue, older Guilty Gear games, and of course, Street Fighter. My current arcade stick, though, is starting to show its age, so I figured it was time to build a new one. Now, my main goal with this build is something portable and easy to customize. You know, something I can take around to tournaments and events and would be easy to upgrade and fix later on. That's why I decided on this, the B&B Fight Stick Gen 2. Its dimensions seem a bit smaller than normal, and it comes in as thin as 1.5 inches. Stack on it being a fully customizable arcade stick, and it seems to be exactly what I'm looking for. However, when I say fully customizable, I mean it. It literally comes in pieces, and you need to assemble it all yourself, straight down to wiring the PCB. So, in this video, I'll be running through the entire build process, explaining what parts I'm using and how I'm connecting everything together. Then at the end, we should have a perfect travel arcade stick. Alright, now let's get started. First up, we have the case, which comes in multiple pieces of acrylic and plexiglass. There's a few different sizes you can get, so considering this is supposed to be a travel stick, I went with the low-profile version. It's only 1.5 inches thick, so this should be super portable when I'm done. I will admit though, I'm a little nervous about finding room for everything. 1.5 inches isn't a ton of working room, but we'll see what happens. So yeah, let's get this stick installed. For this build, I'm going with the standard Sanwa JLF. This is the lever used in pretty much every arcade setup in Japan, and it's kind of considered the default among fighting game fans. While I'd usually keep the Sanwa JLF as is, there is one mod I plan to make here. We're going to be installing a JLF link. Basically, this replaces the ball top with a removable version. Honestly, the ball top is the major reason traveling with an arcade stick can be so difficult, so getting it out of the way will be a huge help. The link I'm using here is by Freaks Mods, and it's called the EX Groove, which sounds straight out of Capcom vs SNK, right? I just love it. To install the removable lever, we first need to remove the default one. Everything's held together with this C-clip on the back. It's a little snug, so I'm using a small flathead to pry it out. Alright, got that out, so now we can remove some of these components. Looks like we have the actuator, which is what hits the micro switches and gives you the input. Next we have the spring that helps the lever return to neutral. If your lever is a little loose or you're getting double inputs, you can always swap out this spring for something heavier. We can now slide out the metal shaft and... oops. You'll notice this little white dome slid off, probably because it's covered in grease. This is what the stick rotates around, so it's kinda hard to get a good grip on. Regardless, we'll need to slide it off anyways, so we can put it on the link. I'm also applying a bit more grease on here, just to prevent any future squeaking, and totally not to replace the grease from when I dropped it. Now we can get all the components lined up and slide the link through. From here, we can just put it back together with the spring and actuator. Getting this C-clip back on can be a little annoying though, so I'm just going to opt for pliers here. And with that, we have the Freaks Mod EX Groove installed. It seems to be rotating pretty well, and all the components seem to be working. But most importantly, I can now remove the shaft itself. Awesome. This is really going to make traveling a whole lot easier. Oh yeah, one more thing here. It does need a ball top, so let's just screw one on top here. Since the link is a removable lever, it requires this included tool to get the ball top locked on, but no big deal. Just lock this on and we're all set. Here's a better view of reattaching the lever. You just slide up on this section and then lock it into the base. Real easy. Okay, with that mod checked off, let's actually get this lever locked in. This B&B Fight Stick comes with all the screws, washers, and nuts needed, so we can just slide them into whichever slot fits the default Sanwa stick. Alright, get these in and flip it over. Next we put on these included washers, just to leave a bit of a gap between the lever and the housing, and let's actually get this lever in place. Since we're using the link in this build, we can just take the lever out and lay the plate face down to line everything up. Isn't that convenient? From there we need to put on these nuts to start locking everything down. Flipping it back over, we can make sure it lines up with the cutouts in the case too. And finally we can tighten the screws. You may want to use pliers to help hold the nuts in place, but I think I got it locked in pretty firmly without. And now for the fun part. We can put in the artwork. For this build, I decided to go really basic with it. This is a travel stick after all, so I kinda want it to be a bit of a sleeper. I ended up going with this. A generic water texture I had in my archive. Yeah, I know, it's almost too nondescript, right? However, I've always been into that vaporwave or future funk aesthetic, so something about this Dreamcast looking water just hit me. You know, I think this turned out pretty alright. I'm definitely getting that mid to late 90s like Sega water vibes, you know? Or maybe even the Marvel 2 title screen. Anyway, let's place this artwork on top of the layer with the stick, and then put this nice piece of plexiglass over top. Of course, removing the protective blue film. From here, we also need to remove the button cutouts. While these seem like just trash, you can actually put these inside clear buttons to make a more seamless art piece. I'm personally not going that route though, but I will save these just in case. We can then lock this artwork in by threading these screws through the 4 holes on the edges. I like to seal the artwork in kind of early, just to minimize the chance of dust getting inside. I've decided to only lightly screw on these standoffs though. These hold the whole case together, so it's probably for the best that we leave some play in here, just so we can line stuff up later on. Onto these buttons, I got a little weird with them. With this plexiglass, you're only supposed to use 30mm screw-on buttons, as I hear the standard snap-in buttons tend to fall out over time. I decided to pick up a set of 8 Sanwa buttons. I just like that classic arcade feel, so you know I was going with Sanwa here too, right? Regardless, as much as I enjoy that clicky feeling, they can be a bit loud. Here's the default click they make. Thankfully, Sanwa has a line of silent buttons too. There's 2 kinds, one that's just a standard button with these foam pads slapped in, and another which uses a newly designed button cap. I actually picked up a set of 8 of those too. The new button caps are also made out of a softer plastic that doesn't make as harsh of a clicking sound. Here's an example. I found these 2nd generation buttons to be a great compromise between sound and still having that clicky arcade feeling, so they're what I really want to use in this build. Unfortunately though, Sanwa doesn't make 2nd gen silent buttons in screw-on, but that's nothing we can't rig up on our own. This is a really easy fix. Just pop out the button cap by pushing in these 2 tabs on the side. Here's the inside of an arcade button, by the way. It's really just a switch inside a plastic housing. We can also disassemble the screw-on buttons the same way. Next, we're going to take those Gen 2 silent button caps and put them in the screw-on housing, making sure the 2 tabs click into place. And we're done. We now have a 2nd gen silent button cap inside a standard button's screw-on housing. Let's give it a test. Perfect. This is much quieter, but it still has that clicky feeling I like. Plus, it's now in a screw-on casing, so we can get this installed into the plexiglass no problem. I can even salvage the remaining parts by putting the standard caps into the leftover housing. Okay, now that we have the button situation sorted out, let's get these locked in place. Just pop them into the case and screw on these rings from the other side. It's a bit of a tight squeeze, but I'm getting everything locked in place pretty well. Oh, I almost forgot here. We have the side panel buttons to install. I went with white screw-ons again, this time in a smaller 28mm. Sanwa doesn't make these in 2nd gen silent form though, so unfortunately I'm stuck using these foam pads from the Gen 1 buttons instead. They're just as easy to install though. Just pop out the button cap, drop in the foam pad, and then snap the button back in. Here's the standard button's kind of clicky sound. And here's with the foam pad installed. It does make quite a bit of a difference, even though I kinda prefer the Gen 2s. Let's just pop these into the side panels and screw them in place. Now with the side panels finished up, let's tackle the front panel. This is where the USB cable attaches. This stick uses a USB Type B port, if that's the proper term for it. This allows you to remove the cable when not in use. Just perfect for a travel stick. I did notice though that it came with the standard USB port on the outside, and the USB-B port is on the inside. That's not really going to work with the PCB I'm installing later, so we'll need to somehow rotate this port around. Thankfully, this was really easy. Just unscrew these 2 long screws, and this whole housing just snaps open. From there, we can rotate the USB ports and screw it back together. While I was at it, I got a plastic casing for this port, just to try to blend it in a bit better with the case. Now we screw it into the front panel and tighten it down. With the stick, buttons, and now cable port installed, it's time for the really technical stuff with this PCB. I'm not the best with these kinds of things, so I just grabbed whatever was newest. In this case, it was the Brook Universal Fighting Board Fusion. Supposedly, there's next to no input lag with this, and it's compatible with basically all modern consoles and PC. I hear it doesn't provide any analog support for PS5 games though, but it's so rare that I play 3D games that I don't think I'll ever notice. While you can screw this PCB into place, I'm kinda worried about over-torquing it and bending the board. So instead, I picked up these stick-on plastic feet. You pop these through the holes at each corner, then stick the PCB wherever you'd like. Now it's time for the part I don't enjoy working on. It's time to get this PCB all wired up. Of course, I bought the PCB with the pre-installed headers, because soldering doesn't look too fun to me. What also doesn't look too fun is all this wiring. No, for real though, it's really not that bad, especially since you can buy pre-made harnesses. The manual shows the pinout, so it's basically just connect the right wire to the right button. There's also a pre-made harness for the stick too, so let's just snap that in. With these pre-made harnesses, everything just fits into place. No soldering or trimming wires needed. Alright, it's been about 20 minutes, but I think I got everything wired up here. Now we just need to connect the PCB to the USB port. And here we are. It's not the cleanest wiring, but it should be good enough to at least make sure everything's working. I can always go back in later and clean things up. And with that out of the way, I think it's time to seal this thing up. This B&B fight stick snaps together like a puzzle. There are even cutouts that the side panels slide into. This is actually kind of a tight fit. There's just so many wires in here that I can feel some outward pressure. Not a lot, and I don't foresee any issues, but I definitely think a thicker case would have worked better. Once everything's lined up, we can now put on the bottom plexiglass cover. You could put art in here, but for the time being, I'm just going to leave it alone. And finally, we can lock everything in place. These screws connect straight to those standoffs that we installed way back. And here we have it, a finished B&B 2nd generation fight stick. Oh wait, forgot to lock in the stick. Alright, now we have the finished B&B 2nd generation fight stick. Let's give it a little test here and make sure everything's working. Naturally, we're going to go with Blazblue Central Fiction. Probably the best fighting game ever. At least if we're not counting Blazblue Continuum Shift, but that's not here nor there. Okay, start seems to be working. So let's get this into training mode and see what's up. Oh yeah, we're going with Makoto here. I've been playing this character since 2009, so I can't exactly stop now, right? Buttons seem to be working. Yep. Man, these buttons feel so much faster than the previous stick. It must be that Brook PCB. I mean, I heard they had like no input lag, but I didn't think it'd be this much of a difference. Or maybe it's the button caps that feel tighter. Huh. Anyway, let's do some combos here. Alright. And with that, I think we can say this build's complete. I'm extremely happy with this finished build. The new joystick feels fantastic, and being able to remove it will make traveling so much easier. The buttons also have a really great tactile feeling to them, just as you'd expect from Sanwa parts. However, with that little mod we made to swap out the silent button caps, they're a whole lot quieter. While my wiring leaves a lot to be desired, and trust me, I will be fixing this mess soon, the Brook PCB is night and day compared to the PCBs in brand name arcade sticks. As far as the build process goes, it was pretty straightforward. I'd say it took about an hour to pull off, probably a little less if you're better with wiring. I will note though, that it feels a little cramped with these 1.5-inch side panels. If this wasn't a travel-focused build, I would totally step it up to the 1 3/4, just to get some extra clearance. Anyway, let me know if you like this kind of video. You know, the more freeform, rambling kind. Or if you're into fighting game stuff too. Alright, thanks for watching, and see you next time.